actually last couple of days, I was lucky enough to get out the last couple of days. I wasn't tied to the desk as I'd been the last couple of weeks. I was very lucky to go out yesterday with our restoration ecologist Ryan, and he showed me a lot of cool things that we're going to get to tonight. And we've got some input from you guys. Julia, we're going to get to the thing you found in your garden, and Meredith, we're going to get to the thing that you found in the pool. Actually, it sounds like it sort of appeared to everybody who was at the pool the other day. But first, let's start with what came in the mail the other day. This was actually a follow-up to a telephone call that I'd gotten a couple of weeks ago from a woman named Sue who lives in Morris, Illinois. She reads the column out there, and she had found a fungus growing in her yard. She said she'd never seen anything like it. Now, what she described over the phone, to me, it sort of sounded like a shelf fungus. She said it was round and it was dark, but it was light in the middle. So I was picturing, like a disc, but it turns out, she said that she would take some pictures, and then she had them printed off at the library, and then, I'll show you in a minute, she actually sent what she dug up. So yeah, she put in a little note, and it says, here's a sample of the fungus, a bit worse for wear, as I dug it up a week ago. I've tried to send you photos, finally got them done at the library. Hope you can figure out what this is. Well, you guys might, I'm going to see if I can hold these up where you can see them. Looks kind of like a tooth, maybe, or kind of like maybe the start of fingers. Here's one more shot. These definitely have a 3D character to them. I don't know if it's coming across. Oh, maybe I'm holding this the wrong way. They're coming up out of the ground kind of like this. Yes, this is Dead Man's Fingers. And Julia, I'm going to try and share the photo that you sent. That was a couple of weeks ago, I think, that you sent that. You found some too in your garden underneath the landscape fabric. So this is a fungus called Dead Man's Fingers, but you'll notice that these pictures we're looking at, it looks more like dead man's teeth, right? Well, it turns out this is a fungus that has, as I'd imagine many fungi do, they have two different forms. They've got the reproductive or sexual form, and they've got the non-reproductive or asexual form, and this is the asexual form that's lighter in color. The scientific name for this mushroom is Xylaria, and it's Xylaria with an X, not a Z. I think it's Xylaria for the genus, and then Polymorpha is the species name because it has these distinctly different forms. Now, so this is the picture, Julia, that you sent, and then if we stop the share and we look at the pictures that reader Sue sent, you can see there's some similarities to it. Julia, I know you said yours was underneath landscape fabric, so it might have been somewhat pushed down as opposed to these that were growing more upward. Well, after Sue picked these and sent them, put them in this baggie here, I think they started to mature because they look a lot more finger-like now. Can you imagine these rising up from the grave? Here's one more. Heard of a lot of people having dead man's fingers in their yard. Not having dead man's fingers, that would be a big problem. But yeah, it's a fairly common fungus, Xylaria polymorpha. Keep your eye open for them. It could be now that we've are kind of through our rainy season, or the season where we had some rain, I should say. We've had some dryness now. We might not be seeing these quite as prolifically, but they are relatively common throughout the region. I know the first time I saw them was back, I guess over 20 years ago. It was when the Park District acquired the property we know as Delnor Woods Park, and they had wanted to made it look really nice. It was acquired with grant money, so they spiffed it up for the public unveiling, and they put mulch around everything. Well, that mulch is notorious for carrying spores from all kinds of fungus, and yeah, these fingers started coming up. I don't remember if it coincided with the ribbon cutting, but it was during that first year. I learned all about all kinds of cool fungi over there at Delnor Woods. Since before we start into the slides for tonight, there's two other things I wanted to share with you. I'm going to try to do another screen share using what we learned last week. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Starved Rock murders that occurred in March of 1960. It's something I can't say that I'm an expert by any means, but I'm certainly fascinated by it. Starved Rock is a place that's near and dear to my heart, and this was a terrible tragedy that happened to three women who'd gone on kind of a girls' midweek adventure. They lived in Riverside, Illinois, and they went out to the state park, as I said, in March of 1960. Well, they turned up dead. They turned up murdered, and quite brutally so. There was a gentleman, a dishwasher at the lodge, Chester Wigger, who was implicated, and he even gave a confession. They took him out to the site. The bodies were actually put and sort of arrayed in an ugly fashion in St. Louis Canyon. So if you're familiar with the park, I mean, these are all very highly traveled places, although not in a cold and snowy time of the year like March and back in 1960. They weren't found immediately. The people didn't know they were missing immediately. There's all kinds of twists and turns to this story. Again, the dishwasher, Chester Wigger, was what he says was coerced into giving a confession. And after, what would that be, 62 years, he was actually paroled earlier, I think it was earlier this year. He's living with his sister now out in LaSalle County. And there's an attorney who is working to clear his name. He feels he was falsely accused. He thinks there's other suspects out there. This is all being related. The reason I bring this up, I'm going to do another screen share here. Let me know if this works. It's called the Andy Hale Podcast. And if you scroll down, that's a different murder. Season 1 was the Starved Rock murders. Here's the three women, Lillian, Frances. Actually, I think it's Frances, Lillian, and Mildred. No. Well, that's their. Oh, that says it right there. Frances, Mildred, and Lillian. Anyway, there has one of Chester's defenses that he offered during the trial, because they had this buckskin jacket that he wore, and it had blood on it, and he said, well, he was a hunter, and that was, I think he said, raccoon blood. Well, that now that we have the technology and the ability to do this, that blood collected that day as evidence on his jacket. That jacket actually is being sent out for DNA testing, and I believe the results are due back in August. Well, this podcast, which has several episodes to it, lays the whole story out, and there's lots of, I guess you'd call them attachments you can open. You can look at, you can read the coroner's description. There were some weird things there that never came up in the trial. There are pictures of the crime scene. There's evidence talking about the ladies having been at breakfast, supposedly But that would have been the day after Chester said he killed them. So, lots of twists and turns. 14 episodes in this podcast, if you're at all interested. Now, with that said, I myself, this is the first podcast I ever listened to, and I don't know how I feel about it. I think it's relatively well done. It was certainly interesting to listen to, but I found myself, I guess because I like to talk, I kept talking back as I'm listening. I don't know if that's a thing. Those of you who listen to podcasts, you probably know to keep your mouth shut, but I found myself, I'd be listening to it as I'm doing the dishes, or listening to it as I'm getting ready to go to work, and I'd be talking back. There is also, if you're not a podcast person, there is also a book. It's been sold actually for many years now at the Starved Rock, down in the visitor center, which is not at the lodge. It's down the stairs, again, if you're familiar with the park. It's kind of a visitor center, nature center, and they have a bookshop in there, and you can also read the book about the Starved Rock murders. But this podcast is leading up to what might be the next installment in the story, when that DNA, those results get released. I think they said they're looking for that in August. So, wanted to mention that. And then, gosh, when we were talking about Chester's jacket and I mentioned raccoon, one more thing I wanted to show you. And Meredith, looks like you're here tonight. You were the eyewitness to this event that happened, was it earlier this week at the pool, or was it last week? We had told the story a week or two ago about Luna the duck, and how she'd made a nest in the locker room, the women's locker room of the pool at Potawatomi. Well, I thought at the time, boy, we should really do a program about the nature of the pool. There's bats that hang out there. There's chimney swifts that hang out in the chimney. There's chipmunks. There's squirrels. Well, and as it turns out, there's raccoons. Meredith, I'm going to pull your photos up here. Let me know if you can see them. Let's go back here. Are these showing up?
Yes.
All right. Well, let's zoom in here. And you were just having a regular old morning at the pool, right?
Right. There were people having a swim lesson, aerobics, and at 11 o'clock they always turn on the water for the slides. And the water came on, and 5 raccoons came barreling out into this water aerobics class. Bedlam ensued, and people were screaming and laughing. And as you can see, the lifeguard here got one of them out, but they kind of ran all different ways. We don't know about the mom.
I love all the bystanders here looking on while the one guard does the heavy lifting. I had someone else tell me that they had a raccoon living with a litter of youngsters in a tree, and the mom would frequently go out. She would stash the babies somewhere, and then she'd go out. I don't know if she was, on a break, but I wonder if this mama raccoon thought she was putting them in a place of safety, only to find out that, the water comes on and the babies fall out. Now, was this heading towards the golf course then, this last little one here?
That one is going towards like the baseball field.
Oh, the park. Okay. All right. So the other direction.
But yeah, they kind of scattered. Some went to the golf course, some went to the parking lot, some went to the back parking lot.
Oh, man. Well, and didn't you say, too, that it's supposed to be part of the opening procedure to run a ball down the slide?
Yeah, we've been swimming 20 plus years there, and usually before opening they do 1 to 3 balls, and then usually oftentimes a guard will go down as well. And for some reason they're not doing it this year, but maybe they're going to start.
Yeah, it would have been great if they joined the aerobics group, huh, Laura? Yes, well, and I can't remember, Meredith, if I told you or Susie, maybe you and I were talking about it. I think, Susie, you normally attend that water aerobics class.
Yes, but my legs were a mess with all the bites from Panama.
So you missed, well, you probably might have got some more bites if you'd been
I
in class,
know,
right?
I know. What a time to miss.
Aw, look at that face, though. Well, and I can't remember if I was talking to one of you or if it was somebody else, but shortly after I started here at Potawatomi, there was raccoons in the slide then, too. And a kid actually came down and told a guard, hey, there's dogs in the slide. And the lifeguard was like, oh, no, we don't let dogs in the pool. That can't be. And then the next kid that came down was kicking and screaming, and there was a raccoon, screaming. And the kid, shoot out the slide one way, and he swam, one direction, and the raccoon swam the other direction, and they chased it around. And I think that one ended up, running off into the golf course. So we have to add now raccoons to the list of wildlife at the pool here, and who knows what else. It's still early. We still got July and August to get through. Meredith, thanks so much for chronicling that little adventure, and let us know the next thing that shows up.
Sure.
Right. Awesome. All right, so let's see. It's been kind of a busy week, so let's get started. I'm gonna share again with another set of slides. Let me just pick the right ones here. Let's see. Now, do y'all see a spider? All right, so
Yes.
all right, this is a spider that I spotted. I was walking with a group of nature nerds on it was last Friday up at Tecowitha Woods, the forest preserve, a little bit north of St. Charles, and the area they call the Big Bend of the Fox River. And I was running late, go figure. But is that going to stop me from taking pictures along the way as I scurry to find the nerds? Well, no. This caught my eye. This is a grape leaf that was hanging over the trail, and this really great example of what we call long-jawed spiders. Now, I don't know about identifying this down to species. I'm pretty sure the genus is Tetragnatha, which is the genus that the family is named after, but I'm going to try and zoom in here so you can see why these things are called long-jawed spiders. Now, so we've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 legs, and then we've got the two what look like shorter legs, but they've got the boxing gloves on them. And what does that mean? That means it's a male. So this is a male long-jawed spider. But that triangular shape behind the palps with the boxing gloves, those are the jaws. And look at the size of those fangs there on the end. That's where venom is injected. Now, does that mean this is a tremendously dangerous spider that we need to avoid? It probably can pierce skin, although I don't know. Those are awfully large. They're definitely they're made for piercing insects. I don't know if they could get them to a point where they could, insert them into a human's finger or not. I didn't try. Something with a long jaw deserves to be treated with respect, but they're cool spiders. Whenever I tend to see them, whenever I see them, it tends to be near water. This was a little uphill from the Fox River. I used to see these all the time when I worked at Red Oak, and I'd walk down to the little cave there that's along the Fox River, but they seem to have a fondness for water. They are orb weavers. So the ones, this is a male, so he's not likely to spin an elaborate web, but the ones that do, it's not the ones I've seen aren't as round as, say, our some of our barn spiders or the Argiope spiders, the black and yellow or banana spiders that we see out in the prairie. The orbs for these guys, the ones I've seen anyway, have a little bit more of a sag to the circular parts of the web itself, but still neat. And I was also excited the way the veins on the grape leaf show up too. It gives a nice contrast to this very cool and pretty common spider that we have here in the Fox River Valley. So after I met up with the nerds, we found another creature, but it's not a spider. This is a daddy longlegs. Some people call them harvestmen. Not a spider, because if we zoom in, we'll see that all of its essential parts are really in one central area there. A spider will have a separate head and thorax would be considered one section, and then the abdomen would be considered another. And these creatures are everything is kind of merged into one main body segment. It still has 8 legs, so it's an arachnid, but it's in the order Opiliones. I've seen this behavior a lot, so this is alive. This isn't a daddy longlegs that got trapped in a spider's web. I haven't found literature that describes this, but it seems as though these guys, I know they're scavengers, and I think they'll go in and they will scavenge off of things another spider has caught. And I think that's what was going on here, because this daddy longlegs was perfectly capable of leaving that web. It didn't, because it was eating. So that's pretty cool, huh? So then another place on the trail, we met this character, or what was once a character. Yes, it's a dead opossum. These are the mammals that have more teeth than any other North American mammal. 50 of those suckers in there. They're quite pointy as compared to, say, a raccoon, which has 40 teeth. I don't know what happened to this guy or gal, but we actually found several dead juvenile opossums a distance away up in the parking lot. So it's just bad week or bad month for opossums at Tekakwitha. Well, as we were walking a little bit farther, and I'm gonna trust my luck here. I have a still of this creature as well, but I want to see if it will. So this is a short little video. We saw this creature moving around in circles, and I took this quick video because it looked like a leech, but for it having legs, it reminded me a lot of a turtle leech. And I also thought when I took the video that it had some grains of sand or dirt on its back. But after I got home and I was looking more closely at the still photos, let's zoom in here. All of a sudden, this makes sense. So this was several feet away from that dead opossum, but this is the larva of a carrion beetle, and I'm not sure which one, but I think it's Necrophila americana, which is the American carrion beetle. They have a yellowish pronotum, that shield up on the thorax that covers the head, with a black body, but it's just a guess, but I know that they are well known for carrying these phoretic mites. So let's zoom in a little bit more so you can take a look. It's not totally in focus, but this isn't an accident that these creatures are on this larva. And I'm wondering if this was sort of, and I don't know what this white blob up here is too. I'm thinking that's not an accident either, but I don't know if that's an egg case of something or just what. There's so much life in dead stuff. It just blows my mind. Well, these mites, they feed on the eggs of the eggs and maybe the maggots too of the flies, which are in competition with the beetles for the dead thing. So these mites are actually beneficial to the beetles, but they can't get themselves. They have no way of moving quickly. They only have their legs. They don't have wings because they're mites. So they hitch a ride on these beetles to get from one dead thing to another. What I don't know is why there were so many on the larva, because the larva doesn't have wings either. And as we saw in that little video clip, it was kind of just running around in circles. So I don't know if something happened and it got somehow removed from the dead opossum, or if they leave the carcass to pupate somewhere else. I don't know any of that. Wasn't able to find it out, and now I kind of want to go back and see what the predominant beetles were on that opossum, and then we'll probably know the answer to what kind of larva this is. But it is a carrion beetle. And then the phoretic mite. The phoretic isn't a species. It's just a term for mites that hitchhike like this, going from one place that they need to be to another place that they need to be by riding on another creature. But very cool. And again, condolences to the opossums, but it sparked a lot of interesting discoveries there on the trail. So if we move on to our next slide. So this was this past Saturday, and we've been in kind of a drought. Well, not kind of. It's been very dry here for about 10 days or so. But we got a lovely rain on Saturday, a little bit of thunder, not too much wind. It was actually a nice soaking rain. But of course, it was the day that we had a cleanup scheduled at one of our parks. It was at Fearson Creek Park with a lovely local student named Callie. She has assembled a great group of volunteers called the Fox River Helpers, and they just go around to forest preserves and parks and they pick up trash. It's really, really cool. Well, because of the rain, we tried to cancel. It wasn't so much the rain, it was the threat of lightning that caused us to try and cancel it. But as we found out, it wasn't possible to reach everybody prior to the cleanup. So I met Callie and her family there, and we did have one individual, an adult, show up to help. And so we went ahead as carefully as we could, knowing that we were in between bouts of lightning. And I make it sound like it was real dramatic. It wasn't. The golf course across the river from where we were had blown the all clear signal. It was just there was a lot of moisture around. So we found some trash, which was nice. Got that picked out of the river, and then we also found this little guy here. This is an American toad, and we're seeing these not by the tens or the dozens, but by the hundreds, because that's what toads do. When we have a wet spring the way we had, there's lots of opportunities for the adults to breed. Female toads can lay thousands of eggs, something like 6,000, 7,000 eggs. A lot more than most of our other local amphibians. In fact, I think it is the most of any of our local amphibians. Well, those eggs, when they're deposited in the water, they look like strands of beads. They're clear with a dark spot in the middle. Well, those eggs hatch into little tadpoles that are tiny and black, and then over just a few short weeks, those transform into these teensy-weensy little toads that emerge in large groups. It's the classic safety and numbers strategy for survival. So these little guys were hopping out all over the place, and Callie thought they were really cool, so we stopped to take a picture. So keep an eye out for these if you're out, if you're near water, if you're near the river, if you're by a pond, because these groups are coming out, and it can sometimes be hard to avoid them, especially if they're trying to cross a bike trail or something. They do eventually disperse. They have to eat live food. In fact, at this size, they're very good at eating little midges and mosquitoes, so love to see that. But they can't all just stay in a cluster because they'll run out of food. So they do have to disperse. But right now, they are in groups as they are leaving the water. Keep your eyes open. You might get to see one, or 100, or 1,000. So now this was one of the photos I took yesterday. So I was out with Ryan, and we were at Hickory Knolls. We were in the natural area, but we were way at the western edge where it borders with Garfield Farm. So local folks, if you can picture that, this is a pretty remote part of our 135 acres, but it's wonderfully diverse. That is an area that has benefited from pretty regular, I want to say every 2 or 3 years, a burn regimen. You don't want to burn it too often, and you do want to stagger the areas that you burn, but that combined with some overseeding and then some great seeds that were left in the soil that were just lying dormant waiting for the opportunity to come back. It's got a lot of nice things out there, and when you've got a diversity of plants, you get a diversity of animals, including this creature here. And I thought, oh, Ryan, poor Ryan, we were out there, we were actually surveying the snake boards, which are squares or rectangles of plywood that we put down to offer. They're also called cover boards, and it's where the snakes, it makes it easy to find what snakes are in the area because you put the cover out there for them, and then you can just look underneath the board. So we were trying to stay on task, but there were just so many cool things, and we did see this creature. I wanted to zoom in. I think we talked about these last year. Looks like a caterpillar, but it's actually a sawfly larvae. Sawflies are they're not lepidoptera. These things are not like a butterfly or a moth. They're actually related to bees and wasps. Sawflies, the female will have an ovipositor that's kind of like a saw, and she will use that to dig into plant material, sometimes even wood, to deposit her eggs. Now, how do we know that this is not a caterpillar? Well, we look underneath. I tried to get a good angle on this. So here's the head over here on the right, and up at the front here we got 1, 2, 3. So assume on the other side there's 3 more. There's the 6, the true legs. But then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pairs of what are called prolegs. I think we've talked about prolegs before on caterpillars. Those are those sticky pads that function to, it helps keep the caterpillar stuck to whatever it's feeding on. But they go away when the caterpillar pupates and transforms into an adult moth or caterpillar. Same with the sawflies. They don't have a bazillion prolegs as adults either, but that's what helps distinguish them from a caterpillar. So if you see something like this, and there's several different species that have the same general color scheme of a light skin with dark spots on it. Sometimes the spots are bigger, sometimes they're smaller, but the next time you see one of these, take a closer look, because it's probably not a caterpillar, even though it's got that soft body. It is a sawfly larva. Now, saw this on I think that's a plantain leaf, and we stopped to look at it as well. This is a moth, and we know it's a moth by the antennae, which are just like threads. Moths can have feathery antennae, or they can have thread-like antennae, but there will never be a knob on the end the way we see on butterflies. So here's our friendly neighborhood Haploa Moth, and if that name rings a bell, it's because back in May, I think it was May 20th, we looked at this, and this is a Haploa Moth caterpillar. Now, is this the same species of caterpillar? Is this caterpillar the same species as the moth we saw? I don't know. I have to do a little more checking into that, but I think the Heploas in the area are there. We do have several species. That the difference, there's some difference in the way the caterpillar looks, but there's also a big difference in these markings. Some have a lot more black on the white markings, some have less, as this one does. So again, it's the genus Heploa. I'm not sure what the species is, but the caterpillars are done, and now the moths are flying. And walk past some wild quinine. The flower heads on this plant always make me think of cauliflower. They're kind of waxy. They even they don't taste like cauliflower. I tried that. They don't. I didn't find that they tasted a lot like quinine either, but some people say they do. I didn't perceive it. We've got some lead plant. Now this is a plant. You know, when they talked about oops, don't look. When the settlers were here, coming to this area, and they're busting up the sod, and they're finding that, oh my gosh, the roots of the tallgrass prairie are just phenomenal for in fact, for as much biomass as you see above the ground, there's probably at least twice as much below the ground. The lead plant, and now this lead plant, let's zoom in here. You can see it's got these leaves that look almost fern-like. This is in a plant that's very well, it's got really deep roots. Let's just say that. I want to say they go down like 15 feet. That name lead plant is an indication of just how much of this, how immovable this plant can be. And there's two really nice stands of it. I'm really grateful for those long roots. I've actually been trying to get some lead plants started in my yard, and I started with some. I bought 2 small plants last year at our Hickory Knolls plant sale, and I put them in the ground, and the rabbits ate them like almost immediately. So apparently lead plant is also really tasty. So I was a little bummed, but I thought, well, maybe this year I'll try again. Well, as things started to warm up this year and plants started coming up through the ground, what should show up but the lead plant? So even though, just like when a burn goes through and it takes off the above ground vegetation, the roots survive. Well, when rabbits eat the leaves and the stem, when they eat the top part of the plant, the roots also survived, and they must have gotten enough nourishment that they were able to send up new shoots again this year, which again got mowed down by the rabbits. But I looked this morning. I was out doing a little bit of weeding, and they're still trying. They're coming back a third time. So I need to get something out there. I forget, what did we talk about last week that repels rabbits? Something that's going to protect them. But out here, I guess the rabbits feel it's not worth busting through all the other tall stuff to get to this lead plant, because it is really flourishing out there. And here's one of several rattlesnake master that's not quite in bloom yet, but you can see the flower head forming. It doesn't really get any more colorful than that, but the flower parts are going to start to open on that head very soon. If we zoom in here and we take a look at the leaves of this plant, we can see how it gets its species name of Yuccifulium. Those do look like yucca leaves. It's not related to yucca. I believe this is in the carrot family, whereas yucca, I want to say, is in the asparagus family, so not closely related at all, but they do have that visual similarity. And then this was one I wasn't familiar with, but Brian introduced me to pale spike Lobelia. It's got, if we look at this photo, we can see that even though it's got a much smaller, the flowers, the individual blooms are much smaller than our other lobelias, it's got that characteristic shape. Oh, but look, there's a little pollinator too. I believe that was an ant that was crawling on there. But the classic lobelia shape to these flowers, and a very, very delicate flower head. Looked really cool out there. And some showy tick trefoil. We know by its 3 leaves here, and its pea-shaped blossoms. Compass plant. This is one of the 4 silphiums that we have in this area, and the story on this, how it gets its name, compass plant, is because supposedly the plant will orient itself so that it doesn't bear the full glare of the hot prairie sun, and that it is often in an orientation where it's pointing north and south. And this one actually was. Whoops. We'll look at this plant again probably in August and September, because it has yet to send up its stem with the flower, the stalk. The flowers are, gosh, sometimes 6-7 feet in the air. We'll take a look at that again later on in the summer. And the butterfly weed, this was, look, a little lead plant snuck into this photo as well. This one is in full bloom, as is the swamp milkweed. Now this is an area, you can see we've got, I think one of the reasons this prairie has done so well is it is quite moist out there. There is a wetland nearby. You can see some cattails here. Swamp milkweed does like to keep its feet wet. So, and then, even in a plants that can survive in a very dry prairie environment, they will appreciate some moisture too. So I think that's another key to the diversity of this special area. So Ryan said, oh man, we got to get after the poison hemlock. And hemlock, some of these, oh boy. Wait just a second. I don't know if this is one of the nights where they're spraying for something that I need to be aware of. Maybe that was just something loud flying overhead. Anyway, so these plants in the carrot family or the parsley family, there's so many of them that just confuse the heck out of me. And I said, Ryan, okay, tell me, poison hemlock, how do we know that's what we're looking at? He said, the purple joints. I said, really? Well, that's easy. I can remember that. So I thought, if I took a picture, then you can remember it too. Here's the lacy leaves. Here's the purple part of the stem, and then here's what the umbel or the flower looks like. So this poison hemlock is indeed very toxic, and but it's not a native plant. It is it's a European import, and it does also do well where there's moisture, which is where it was growing right by the swamp milkweed and the cattails. And the great Angelica. This is one of my favorite plants, but I couldn't believe it's already done blooming. Won't be long, it'll be time to collect the seeds. You might be wondering, it's got a purple stem too. Is it as toxic as the poison hemlock? I've heard yes, I've heard no. Most of the references I was able to dig up, though, refer more to its medicinal qualities. There were a couple of references that talked about settlers using it as a seasoning and as a flavoring for drinks. And then there were those references that said it's poisonous. So don't do your own research if you're at all considering doing anything with Great Angelica. I just think it's a really cool plant. This particular plant was over 7 feet tall. I mean, really, really incredible. And going to seed. So, I had to run a couple errands yesterday, and this is just a momentary rant. I won't belabor the point. We're getting close to wrapping up here, but I had actually gone to get some Roundup. I've cut, my neighbor has a crabapple tree in their backyard, but growing up, like almost twining around inside the crabapple tree is a buckthorn tree. So I have tons of buckthorn sprouts coming up around my yard, and some have gotten to the point where I have to use loppers to cut them down, and I want to dab something on them. I don't have a herbicide license, but Roundup will take care of that too if I dab it on. I'm not spraying it. I'm just going to use a paintbrush to dab on the cut stems probably next month, once the active growing period is over. But I wanted to make sure I had some on hand. So I'm here in the herbicide and pesticide aisle of one of our local box stores, and there's so much out there that kills so many things. And this one brand is called Spectricide. When you set out to, if you do decide that there's something you have to get rid of, you want to try and be as cautious as possible and as focused as possible, so that you're only killing that one thing that has become has gotten out of control. But these, so many people have the attitude, well, the only kind of, the best bug is a dead bug, or if I get this, well, I can't help but kill what I need to. Well, I'll just, get rid of all the bugs. So it was just kind of sobering when we hear about the state of our insect world, and how, on the one hand, insects make the world go round, and on the other hand, we're out there killing them. There's so many people out there. There was I think it was maybe a mother and her adult son, and they were they were just loading up on all sorts of different things. And I'm trying to do the mind my own business thing, but it's just really sobering how much there is out there that kills our arthropods. And then when I walked into the store, there's a whole other aisle of ways to kill things with backbones. So I don't give advice on how to get rid of stuff. I to always strive for seeking balance and trying to if an animal has found its way into your life and you don't want it there, try and figure out what drew it there in the first place. Was it food? Was it shelter? Whatever it's after, if you can eliminate that, you'll probably get rid of the animal that you feel is being a pest. So and a little sobering trip through the hardware store, and I just felt I couldn't share it with the people who were shopping there, so I'm going to share it with you guys. Okay, one more kind of bummer topic before we end on a high note. So you recall a few weeks ago we had to have the bur oak tree in front of Good Natured World headquarters sprayed for the insect now known as the spongy moth. Well, it turns out there is a lot of these creatures here in St. Charles, over on the east side of town. This is the one I became aware of yesterday through a phone call from a reader. There's at least 5. There were 5 trees that I saw, but then when I talked to the city, it turns out there's a lot more in people's yards. The caterpillars have progressed now from they're done with their larval instars, and now they're pupating. So inside this little brown pupa here, is a developing spongy moth, and all around it are the leaves that they've eaten. I haven't seen something like this in years. Look at this tree. So this is local folks. In the background is Lincoln School. The street in front is 7th Avenue, and the cross street is Indiana. So actually, Susie, it's just you probably know where this is. But there's not a single leaf left on this tree. And then this tree was a block or so away. This is a tree in a person's yard. I was actually trying to see that fuzzy thing in the middle. That's a caterpillar. I was trying to zoom in. You can see the light was getting low, but I didn't realize until today that there was another caterpillar right over here munching away. And then on this street, this is South Street. So 1, 2, 3 oaks in a row, and look at those bare branches. I mean, these gypsy moths have really, really socked it to the moths over there. When I talked to the city today, they said that they actually had these 3 trees treated, and they are working on a plan for control for next year because so many of them are in the pupating stage now. It's really too late to do anything for this year. So they're gearing up for battle next year. All right, so I said we're going to end on a high note. Let's end on a delicious note. I think they're delicious, I say. And by the way, this is not my cooking. So this is my friend Melinda. She and I are both elderberry fiends, and longtime viewers, you might recall when I made the elderberry cordial. I tried making elderberry pie. I have elderberry tincture, which is elderberries and vodka. It's supposed to be really good for the immune system. But there's so many aspects of this plant that are useful. Well, Melinda, she is actually going to send me a pie recipe too. But here she made elderflower fritters. So she dipped the flowers in a batter and deep fried them and sprinkled them with honey and powdered sugar. And I asked her what they tasted like, and she says that they're a little sweet and a little savory. The recipe I used called for powdered sugar, but I added extra because I wanted to entice my kids. The flavor was reminiscent of fried zucchini. The recipe I used is from the Vegan on Board site, and I used ginger beer. It must have been a beer batter that she was making. Yet another use for elderberry. I always shy away from deep frying because I never know what to do with the leftover oil. It turns out now the Natural Resources Commission here in town is now going to be doing annual oil collection, so that problem is solved. Now it's just my own clumsiness and my fear of getting spattered with hot oil that I have to overcome. But elderflower fritters, if you're going to make them now, because elderberry are in bloom and it's not going to be too much longer before they're done. And then any elder recipes that you do will have to be with the berries, not the flowers, because the flowers will have to wait till they come back next year. All right, with that, I'm going to stop the screen share. And looks like we got some chats piling up here. Okay, so yes, the raccoons coming down the slide. Do daddy longlegs spin webs? No, they don't, Sarah, but they somehow are able to navigate in the webs. I used to see this at Red Oak all the time, and I would say the first 3 years I worked there, I thought that they were daddy longlegs that got trapped in the webs, and then I finally took the time to sit and watch them. And they prowl around in the thick webs that pile up around the the outside lights, and they seem to be feeding on the carcasses of what the spiders left behind. They don't seem to be going after anything alive. They don't seem to be, menacing the spiders in any way. But they're just able to get in those webs and feed on what the spiders, like their leftovers. Is what it looks like is going on. So yeah, they don't spin webs, but they do visit webs. And let's see, it looks like pheromone. So I know there was some gypsy moth treatment, and that was there's a bacteria that affects a certain stage of growth, and if you want to type in some more, because I see down here you've commented, can't get to my email right now. It was the Campton Hills Community Newsletter. Yeah, so Bacillus thuringiensis is a bacteria that stops, I thought it was the caterpillars in a certain stage of growth. And that's why, like, the city said they couldn't do anything this year because these trees are beyond that caterpillar stage. But the good thing is it stops the spongy moth, but it will also stop any other species that happens to be in that developmental stage. Now, if they've gone on and they're pupating, or if they're just coming out of their eggs, it won't affect them. Either they're in their eggs, it won't affect them. But whatever that developmental stage is that they're targeting for the spongy moth, the other caterpillars will be susceptible to it too. And then as far as raccoons and rabies, that has not been reported here in Illinois. The two main carriers for rabies in Illinois are skunks and bats. And for that reason, neither of those can be rehabilitated. And whenever one is captured or is found to be sick or injured, they always have to be put down. I don't know, like, virology. I don't know how viruses work, why the rabies virus can't just sweep through anything that's susceptible to it. But I know I've heard the term raccoon rabies. It's present in some states, but it has not been found yet to be here in Illinois. So that said, raccoons carry just about everything else. Anything that you try to protect your pets from can be found in a raccoon. Distemper, leptospirosis, all the eggs and the worms that pinworm, hookworm, whipworm, all of those things. It's a wonder we have any raccoons, but they are amazingly rugged, and they seem to tolerate a lot of these diseases and viruses. They do, though, I think, die with some regularity because so often the skulls that are brought into the nature center, people have found, are raccoon skulls. So we've got a lot of raccoons, and a lot of raccoons die. They just, in this state anyway, aren't dying from rabies. Yes, so formerly known as the gypsy moth, now known as the spongy moth. Okay, so a pheromone that is supposed to prevent the male spongy moth from finding a female. Well, let's hope that it works. So I wonder, Kim, are the moths flying now? I haven't seen any.
I have no idea. But a lot, and Nextdoor.com, there was a lot of talk about those flame flies really low. So they sprayed them. It sprayed yesterday, Monday.
Okay.
So I'm assuming they timed it at the right time, but
yeah, I would think somebody's on the ground, keeping track of all of that.
I hope so.
Well, I remember, Laura, when you brought the lizard last year, the little baby lizard, I was watching a male spongy moth fluttering around them. They're daytime flyers. With this spongy moth, used to be called gypsy moth. The males fly, the females don't. The females are white and they're fat and they sit on the tree, and the males flutter around and use their antennae to find them, and they do it in the daytime. And remember that, Laura? It was like this real erratic kind of and the males are small and brown. They're smaller than the females. more slender than the females. And they flutter around, and I guess, they use those antennae to try and, pick up the scent. And I haven't seen them flying yet, so let's hope the pheromone, I don't know if it hangs out and covers the pupae when then they come out and have it disrupt their cycle. I don't know, but Meredith, you asked, will the trees recover? So I'm not an arborist and I can't say for sure, but I do know that back, again, going back to the red oak days, we had a tree in the park north of Red Oak at Lippold Park. There was a tree that was completely defoliated, and it leafed out again the next year, but it hadn't been treated, and so it got defoliated a second year, and 2 years in a row killed the tree. So the leaves are what make the food for the tree. So depending on what's in the roots, what it was able to store up before it lost its leaves, it might be able to survive and come back next year. But I think what we saw it was a white oak down by red oak, and it did not have enough nutrient, enough food stored up in its roots to survive 2 years of defoliation. So let's hope that's the case with the trees here on the east side, that they can survive 1 year and be okay. I'm anxious to see if the city's going to publicize what people should be looking for, because it seems like these things are starting to pop up. They're having a really big year, and once that happens, then they just seem to pop up more and more places. So I'll try and stay on top of that. And you chimed in too. Will the trees recover? Depends on the species and the condition is in health-wise. This early in the season, the oaks may send out new leaves and be able to photosynthesize enough to make new leaf buds. Yeah, let's hope. That'll also depend on, do we get enough rain? So the trees aren't going to go into a drought protection mode. There's some other factors we have to consider too. But yeah, we're in the midst of a little battle here with the spongy moth. Keep your keep your eyes open. Don't keep your mouths open. We saw, those pictures we were looking at from when the gypsy moths were out in front of the annex. There's a lot of stuff that drops down out of those trees when those moths those caterpillars are eating. But keep your eyes open. If you see more trees that are being defoliated, let me know. I've been kind of collecting pictures to keep track of where it's at and putting a date and a GPS to them. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but I think it's interesting. With that, does anybody else have anything they would like to share with us on this lovely June evening? We got through this night with, knock on wood, barely a technical glitch. So maybe that's a sign that we should end it, huh? Folks, thank you so much for your time tonight. Great to see y'all. Hope you enjoy the rest of the week, and hope to see you back here again next Tuesday.
Thank you, Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Take care.
Thanks, Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
A good night.